Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Cheryl, and today I'm here to bring you my December wrap-up. So I know it's kind of late, but you know, that's just the way it goes. So without further ado, I'm gonna get into the books I read in December. Some of these I have already talked about, so I won't give too much detail about those. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into this. Okay, so these will be in the order I've read them, not in the order of my rating for them. So the first book I'm gonna talk about today is Breaking Dawn. You guys know how I feel about this series. Breaking Dawn is the conclusion in this quartet, I guess, and it was just about as bad as you would expect. I have an entire rant video about this. I will link it down below, but safe to say, I hated this book. Renesmee and Jacob, and I obviously gave that book 1 star. So the next book I read is called A Lady's Vanishing Choices, which is a book I was not expecting to like quite as much as I did. So this follows our main character who, for lack of better terms, is not like other girls. However, she doesn't put other girls down because she's different. Everyone in her village and in her town thinks she's odd. So it's more in that way, not I'm better than you because I'm different. So the book kicks off when our main character sees something dastardly happen in the woods. She thinks that she sees someone burying a body, and then all of a sudden there are attempts on her life. The Duke, or the local man in charge, I guess, he takes her under his protection and saves her from one of these incidences. However, this leads to him bringing her into his home, and that is frowned upon because they are not married, so he marries her, and this is just a marriage of convenience for both of them, so her reputation isn't tarnished, and it is just fun. It is not the best thing written, the characters aren't the most intriguing, but it was a lot of fun to read. It was a very, very quick read, and obviously I am a sucker, like a lot of people, for like the marriage of convenience trope, and this one delivered. And I rated that 3 stars. So the next book I read was for a readathon or read-along, and that is A Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. I had very mixed feelings about this book, like a lot of people did. The beginning was so unbelievably slow, and while it was atmospheric and more character-driven than plot-driven, it dragged. It was so tedious to read at times, and there were too many characters. While we only really followed a couple of them, there were just so many in the background that you couldn't really get invested in any of them, and it just, like I said, it was very tedious. Now, the second half of the book definitely picked up in terms of plot, and it was kind of crazy from where it picked up to the end. It just suddenly went go, 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 and I appreciated that a lot more. I don't think I'm going to continue this series because the character I like the most, I don't believe appears in the next book. I could be wrong, but that's the kind of vibe I got from, one, the way this book ended, and also reading the synopsis of the other book. But if you don't know, this book follows our main character, Vasilisa. She lives in Russia, and her mother would tell her these stories and these folk tales, and all of the villagers did believe in these folk tales. All of a sudden, her life is turned around, and she gets a stepmother as her mother dies, and then her stepmother is not a nice person and starts telling them they can't believe in these fairy tales, and she starts pushing Christianity, as there is also a priest that comes to town. This leads to a chain of events where turns out a lot of these creatures are real, and belief in them is what gave them their power, and now that they are weakening, something is awakening. So the first half of the book I would have given honestly a 1 or 2 stars, but the latter half of the book I would given a 5 stars, so I kind of averaged the rating to like a 3.5, 4 stars. It was enjoyable, but man, that beginning dragged. So the next book I read was The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis. I've talked about this one in depth in a review as well. I did not enjoy it. I felt that it fell very flat of what it was trying to do, which is be a conversation about rape culture. None of the characters were likable, but they weren't meant to be unlikable. They just didn't take responsibility for any of their actions, and I did not enjoy this book, and I gave it a 2 stars. So the next book I read was my favorite book of the month and by far my favorite new series, and that was Magic Bites by Ilona Andrews. Don't let these covers fool you, they are absolutely fantastic. So this first book follows Kate Daniels, who is a mercenary and she takes odd jobs in order to pay her bills. And in this world, it was pretty much like ours, except for way back when, before technology took off, there was magic. However, with the rise of technology, magic was slowly diminished. Like a rubber band that stretched too far, it will bounce back, and that is exactly what happened. So magic, in a big wave, came back and absolutely destroyed technology and destroyed modern things such as buildings. And now magic is in a constant fluctuation with technology. When technology is high, magic doesn't work. When magic is high, technology doesn't work. So it is a story of how these characters are trying to survive in a world that is constantly in fluctuation. So the book takes place a fair bit after this event, so life has struggled and found ways to adapt. For example, when technology is up, they have like streetlights, but when technology is down and magic is up, they have Fey lanterns, which are powered by magic instead. So people have found a way around. But also with the rise of magic has brought back a lot of creatures, paranormal creatures, and this book has the best depiction of vampires I have seen in a long time. It is a very unique depiction. I talk about this in my favorite books of 2018, that's the year, right? 2018 video. But these vampires remind me a lot of the Wendigos from Until Dawn, just in the way they are described and how creepy they are. And there's also shapeshifters and all sorts of other paranormal creatures. And I don't know what it was about this book, but I loved it from start to finish. And sneak peek for my January wrap up, I've read the next 3 in the series. I think there's 10 total, and I love this series so much. I gave it a 5 stars, and I definitely cannot wait to continue the series. It is by far my new favorite thing I've read. So the next book I read, I did not enjoy that much, and it does seem to be a BookTube favorite, and that is A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. This is a case of I fell victim to the hype. I would not have picked up this book normally, as it's not a premise or type of book I would normally enjoy reading, but I fell to the hype, I picked it up, and surprise, surprise, I didn't end up enjoying it because, like I said, it's not a book I probably would have picked up on my own. And it is the story of the descendants of Watson and Holmes, and they meet in this boarding school, and all of a sudden one of their classmates dies, and they are wrapped up in this mystery trying to unravel what's happening, and they're searching for clues and basically mimicking what their ancestors did. I thought it was an interesting twist, but I didn't like either of the main characters. Wasn't really my cup of tea. Like I said, I did appreciate its conversations about mental health and substance abuse, but as a whole, I just did not enjoy it that much. So I gave it like a 2.5, 3 star. This next book I'm going to talk about, and the last book I read in December, is one that maybe shouldn't be on this list because I read 80% of it in December and like the last 20% of it in January, but because I read the bulk in December, I'm going to talk about it here, and that is another book that ended up on my favorite book list. Favorite books of 2018 list. Man, that was hard to say. And that is What the Hell Did I Just Read by David Wong. If you guys have seen that video, you've heard me talk about this book. It was a wild ride from start to finish. This is the 3rd book in the John Dies at the End, what was originally a trilogy. I'm pretty sure he's writing more books. However, I don't know if they are following these same characters or just set in this world. But so obviously, because this is the 3rd book, I can't tell you too much detail about it. Although they are sequential, but not picking up exactly where the last one left off. They just reference events that happened in the previous books. So this follows David and John, our main characters, who are dumbasses most of the time, honestly. And in the first book, they took a drug called soy sauce, and this drug has killed everyone who has taken it except for these two. And basically it uncovered the veil that everyone else was stuck behind. So now they get to see the cosmic horrors of the universe, as well as the fact that there are parallel dimensions and some of them are absolute hell. And they get to see the monsters that plague the city that they live in, which is called Undisclosed. So these books are written almost like a journal, but not necessarily in like diary format. It is more so our main character's account of the events that have happened. The nice thing about this, or the thing I really like, is that he's a very unreliable narrator. So especially in this third book, you don't really know if what he's telling you is the truth. So this third book follows John and David in their town, and children start to go missing. And the police very quickly realize that this is not a case they can solve and pass it on to Dave and John. Because even though a lot of people in this town can't see the monsters and whatever horrors are plaguing the city at any given point, they do know that shit isn't right in this town, that there is something wrong with this town. And in the previous books, really dramatic things have happened in this town that have actually destroyed parts of it and destroyed the economy. And so even though they can't see what has happened, they're living with the effects of it. And so they pass this case on to John and David, and they quickly get tied up in a whirlwind event of really awful things, basically. So these books are incredibly funny because David Wong is a writer at Cracked, and they're very dark in their humor, and that is something I really like about this series. But this book also took a more serious tone at times, as it talked about mental health, it talked about substance abuse, it talked about how to deal with a loved one when they don't want to seek help, and whether or not you should be stuck as their caregiver. And it is a very complex book and everything it talks about, while also being a very funny horror novel. And I love this series so much, and I can't wait to continue with the next one. What did I give this book? I give this one a 4.5. The only reason I didn't rate it higher is just because I didn't enjoy it quite as much as the other ones. But that doesn't mean that it was in any way a bad book. I would recommend picking up this series if this at all sounds interesting. But yeah, like I said, I cannot wait for the next one. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see all of you guys in my next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave a comment if you have read any of these books, or what was your favorite book you've read in December. And like I said, I will see all of you guys next time. Bye!